It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman here with our executive director here at Redeemer Radio, Cindy Black, for Theology of the Body Thursday.
We return. It's been so long.
It is the triumphant return.
Well, that might be overstating it a bit.
Triumphant return of Theology of the Body Thursday.
Did you say triumphant?
The triumphant. So what's on the agenda for today?
Well, I was reading an article about the smart devices, which I like to call spy devices.
Well,
yeah. That I had never really thought of.
It's a trade-off.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And it talked about how they have had to program the responses because people are actually willing to share mental illness struggles and ask questions of a device, oftentimes over talking to a person in their life. So this really intrigued me. And I actually found research articles where they surveyed people. And if you're married or dating somebody and you are struggling with some kind of anxiety or mental illness issue, you are far less likely to tell them, like if you have to cancel plans, to tell them the truth about that. Whereas if somebody has a physical ailment, you know, a stomach bug or, you know, a headache or something like that, virtually across the board, they share that physical ailment. So just thinking of like the stigma, you know, in Theology of the Body, we talk about the integration of mind, body, soul, like that we're an integrated person. So where does this come from
where we put so much emphasis on our physical health to the point of, it's interesting, like with many insurance companies, preventative physical health care is almost always like doesn't cost the patient anything.
Right.
And they really push for us to have preventative health checks, like early detection and things like that. But, you know, with our mind-body connection, you know, so few insurance companies, or it's very limited in the resources that they'll put towards mental health kind of issues.
Right. Yeah. The counseling, therapy, and things like that probably are not covered by a lot of
exactly. So, I mean, it really is something that I think as Catholics who know the dignity of the human person and the integrated relationship between our mind and our bodies, our physical and spiritual well-being, that we really should be part of breaking down this stigma of mental health. And, you know, I was trying to imagine going through difficult parts of my life if I had a device right there, you know, that I don't know. I just grapple with whether it's better to have the device and at least be able to get resources from there, or whether it's better to talk to a person, but then there's the stigmas. I don't know. I don't have a lot of answers to that, but I think it's a really worthwhile topic for us to think about and be aware of.
So thinking about this scenario, talking to a person about your mental problems, there's a hurdle to get over there. And there shouldn't be. That's what we're talking about, that there should not be this stigma, that we should be open and willing to talk to people and get help whenever we need it. But since there is that, you think about maybe evolution. Maybe instead of talking to a person, you used to see if there's a book or a magazine article or something like that you could find on the topic. And then internet is available. So you look it up on internet, and you Google your issue, your struggle, depression, thoughts of suicide, whatever it might be, you might turn to Google. And now it's just an extension of it that you can do that via voice instead of typing it. So it doesn't seem that too far of a stretch that we're looking for answers to questions. And if we're embarrassed to go to another person, that we would turn to an electronic device these days for that. The question I would have is, what kind of answers are you going to get from that electronic device? And is that going to be solid advice? Could an electronic device actually give you good counseling or direct you to, like, hey, I would recommend you talk to somebody. Here's some people in your area.
Right. And the developers are really, I mean, at least in the article that I read, taking this seriously and saying, okay, what are the best responses? And let's look at the different ways they can account for where somebody is on that spectrum, which is another thing. Like, we don't stop and think about like the spectrum of mental health. Like, nobody is in a perfect state of mental health or physical health.
Right.
That it's a continuum. And in some of the surveys, it asked questions like, would you want somebody with a mental illness to move in next door to you? Would you want to work closely with somebody with mental illness? And people really don't want to face that. But when I try to think of it myself, there's a pretty vast reason. If it's somebody who has had bouts with depression, anxiety, or something, I don't think I would struggle with that. But if it's somebody who's like delusional schizophrenic
or violent or something.
Right. So it really is a complex issue that we have a responsibility to help overcome the stigma and to see ourselves and our brothers and sisters' mental health as something that we need to be open to and be willing to help people carry the cross of that. And I don't know, and to integrate our spiritual life with that mental and physical health.
If you think about it, if you said, I don't want to work with somebody that has depression, I don't want to work with somebody that's depressed, maybe everybody would agree with you and society would say, yeah, of course you don't want to do that. But if you said, I don't want to work with somebody in a wheelchair, like all of a sudden red flags go up. Like, what is your problem? Like, why are you judging somebody else because of some disability that they have, of some physical, like that doesn't affect who they are as a person? Why is one accepted and one is said, no, you're being unreasonable here? Another
interesting thing that I think we need to remember is that the two are interrelated. So if somebody experiences trauma in their childhood, it's going to also impact their physical health. It's going to have an effect. Like, there's all kinds of studies on the vagus nerve and how, you know, it sends out all these sensors, and when there's trauma and things like that, that it carries the response from that within it and impacts us, you know, well beyond when a trauma takes place. Earlier this week, I was with somebody that I love dearly through a very difficult, they had to experience something very mentally draining, and I could see the physical effects it was having on the person I love. And then actually me seeing the mental and physical anguish that they were going through, I almost feel like I woke up this morning and I almost feel like if you're in like a minor car crash and your body's just achy from the like bracing yourself and that impact.
Yeah.
I feel like that today. I almost feel like I was in a car crash or that I'm coming down with a flu or something. But I really think it's because of watching the person and taking on, because I love them so much. I was feeling I was experiencing what they were experiencing with them, which is a beautiful thing in the communion of persons, that when somebody rejoices, we rejoice with them, or when they suffer, we suffer with them. But then it has its physical effects, and that we shouldn't expect it not to do that. That's the way our bodies were made, that we're that integrated person. Likewise, laughter. I was listening to you and Andrea this morning, and I was laughing in my car, and that boost my mood and actually made me kind of forget about my aches for a while. And so I think as the body of Christ, looking at, our brothers and sisters and even ourselves, and really giving ourselves space to experience the things that we're experiencing and to be able to work through those things with an authenticity is really crucial.
We talk about the body of Christ a lot and how we're different parts of the body. In Corinthians, when St. Paul's talking about it, the part I like to end on is him saying the parts that seem to be weaker are all the more necessary. And this idea that I think we're embarrassed of our weaknesses and we maybe try to ignore them and pretend like they don't exist. And so if we're having some kind of mental issues or stress in our lives or anxiety or depression or anything like that, we don't want to admit to having those things. But St. Paul is saying, like, there is power in our weakness and in our need to depend on one another, and that we are part of a body of Christ, and that we shouldn't be ignoring those weaknesses, but we should be seeking help for them, and we should be looking out for each other and supporting each other, not judging each other for those weaknesses, whether it be physical or mental or spiritual, but to be support for one another.
Absolutely. And I think while you were talking, I was thinking about how I struggle. My memory is not great. And I can struggle to remember somebody's name, and I'll be mentally like going through the alphabet. And I get worried that somebody's going to think that I don't think they're important because I can't necessarily remember their name. People don't think I'm weak or less loving because I wear glasses.
Right.
I don't control my eyesight, but I also don't really control my memory.
Right.
Like, we like to think that we've like mastered every aspect of our thoughts and our mental, how we respond mentally to things. But there's really things that are just outside our control. And we really should give people more latitude with wherever they are in things.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm saying that very well.
We might go to the dentist every 6 months for a checkup. We might go to the doctor for an annual checkup. But are we doing things for our mental health? Are we going to see somebody once a year just saying, hey, here's some things that I've been struggling with. Is there anything that I should be kind of on the lookout? Is there anything that I should be changing in my life to adjust for the way I'm reacting to things? Are there things in my marriage that we need to be talking about and working on? Talking with the doctor yesterday about couples therapy and things like that. So many things that, again, are we taking care of ourselves?
Right.
And why is it that we would do those things for our physical health, but we don't do them for our mental health?
Exactly. Yes.
I think this is a lot to think about. And I think that whole idea of electronics is a whole nother thing of how that could be helpful or maybe damaging as well. But that electronics shouldn't replace human interaction, those things, but hopefully it could be a bridge to that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Cindy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.